Hi, my name's Matthew Norton and I'm the founder of the Memusi Foundation. We're a charity who work in Kenya in the south of the country close to the Tanzanian border. We work in a town called Magadi, which is close to the Tanzanian border in a county called Kajiado, which is the biggest county in Kenya. Our work focuses in education. We work supporting children who live in abject poverty, who either wouldn't be in the classroom because there is no school for them to go to, or they can't afford to be in the classroom, or simply that they are in a classroom but the school is providing inadequate support and facilities for that child to be in school. Our aim is to provide children with the opportunity to escape poverty in their lifetime through education. During this video today, I'm going to talk to you about some of the work that we're doing with innovation and how we're really hoping through some of our work we can really change the shape of how education is done and done properly, but also how we're hoping that that has a wider impact across Kenya, in rural communities, those communities that are living in poverty, and across wider Africa as well. As a charity, we work in a number of ways. We build our own schools, we develop them as markers of quality, we ensure that those schools are providing the very best that they can do to the children that we support. We then have a program called Memusi Outreach, where we support 20 other schools with healthcare, with teacher development, with resources, and with community empowerment as well. We have a belief as an organisation that to have a school is not just to have a building. Way too many charities and way too many organisations that work in the education space will build a classroom and that's it. And it's great that classrooms are built. Don't get me wrong, I'm not advocating against that, but there are so many more important things that need to be right in order to get the get the very best from inside that classroom. If a child is ill, if there are children who have abdominal pains, if the children are suffering from malaria or toothache, all of those things will mean that a child is not in school. A child whose parents are struggling, a child whose parents are struggling financially, a child whose parents are struggling with their health probably won't be in school. A child whose parents are not educated has a chance that they will struggle more than a child whose parents have been educated. Schools that have untrained, unqualified, and unmotivated teachers are not likely to do as well. Classrooms are great if you've got desks in there, if you've got textbooks, if the teachers and the children have all of the materials that are needed in order for them to succeed. And that's what we're about at Memusi. And through Memusi Outreach, we make sure that we're helping as many schools as we possibly can to make sure that they're getting their classrooms functioning properly. One of the final things that we do is through our work, through our study, through the findings that we have, we try to influence change. We've seen that in a number of different ways. So through our program on deworming and healthcare, we've been able to show the outputs, the impact that that has on attendance, the ultimate impact that that has on grades. We've seen the same through our work on female hygiene and how supporting girls with education around their periods and providing them with quality materials and the appropriate training from the appropriate people has seen absence in schools drop by 40%. We've wiped out absence in schools. And that just then again goes on to have a really positive impact on education and grades, and doing so in a consistent way. One of the things that I wanted to talk about today, and the purpose of this video, was to talk about how we're innovating in classroom development, to enable us to demonstrate that even with restricted budgets, that we can make sure that the work on construction happens, but also then that critical work within the classroom also happens. So let me tell you a little bit more about that. So the work that we're doing with classroom innovation started through a conversation that I had and a challenge that I set to two incredibly talented architects. They were studying in Denmark at the time. I met one of the architects in Halifax, in West Yorkshire, and they're now working all across the world. I was lucky enough to meet them and set a challenge for them. Wherever you travel across Kenya, classrooms look exactly the same, unless you're talking about private schools who've got a lot of money, which might have different types of build. Every other classroom you see will look exactly the same. Same dimensions, same look, exactly the same. Those classrooms cost in the region of about £10,000. Depends on the exchange rate at the time, but it's roughly £10,000. Now, I set these two architects a challenge. I said to them, I'd like you to design me a classroom that costs £5,000. My aim was to have the overall cost of construction. I didn't necessarily think that they would do it. I didn't think that they would achieve that. But what I wanted to do is set them a target that would really push limits and challenge limits. There was other things that we needed to consider as well. It's really important for me that we have local people involved. This should never be about me. It should never be about a sponsor. It should never be about a name on a building. When you do that, you start creating a problem. This is about community ownership, about communities taking responsibility for the classrooms. The whole part of our mission is to empower communities who are making change for themselves. Incredible communities who are not settled in education, but are trying to make a difference. So that was really important. In addition to that, we also know that the environment that we work in is incredibly hot and dusty. And we also wanted to make sure that we were therefore reducing the overall temperature within the classroom. And then finally, and again critically, is we wanted to make sure our projects were sustainable, making sure that our overall impact on the environment was reduced as well. What we've ended up with is a result of a classroom that actually meets all of those needs. The overall cost of the classroom is £5,000. I caught up with Hannah to explain more about the design and explain more about how this came about and how those different criteria have been met. So here's my conversation with Hannah.
Hi, Matt, and thank you for the Memusi Foundation for really bringing this design to life. Sure, I can kind of tell you a bit more about the design of the classroom and why it looks like it does. So the kind of fundamental aspect of this building is its kind of location in a hot, arid climate. So you can see the thermal mass in the gabion walls. So during the day, the sun will actually heat up these walls. And because the classroom is a space which is to be used during the day, it will keep the inside spaces a lot cooler. And you can actually see that as well with the roof raised off the walls, and that's to help airflow and cross ventilation. And also with the windows, you can see they're opposite each other. This will all help the hot air to move through the classroom and out to the surrounding environment. And keeping temperatures cooler during the day in the classroom is really important for the kids to be able to learn and concentrate effectively. And another aspect of this building is the idea of actually building community. So the process of construction, actually using rocks as infill into the walls, into the frame structure, is so that it can be built locally, and because of this, it has a very low embodied energy, which means that in terms of kind of an overall sustainability perspective, we're hoping that it will actually have a low kind of embodied carbon. And that's really important when you think of the kind of global impacts of climate change and this type of thing, which will have an impact in the Magadi region of Kenya. Well, I think, real innovation comes when you have to be resourceful, and, not only for the kind of kids in the region, but also as an architect to have that kind of challenge makes you think outside the box and to look at what you have in the environment. And something, when years ago, when we'd been to the area, we'd noticed this kind of rocky landscape, and we wanted to use those elements actually in the building. And to do that, not only saved costs, but also kind of saved on embodied energy and importing materials, because it's such a remote area as well that there wasn't much infrastructure in terms of construction. So we have two elements in this building. We've got the prefabricated frame, and then we've got the infill. And the idea was to basically use what we had in the landscape and to work with that. And I'm really happy to see kind of throughout this process, it's actually been hitting those, that kind of specification that you wanted from the start. And that will hopefully allow the class and the children to actually invest the money in other things to support their education.
So there you are. I really hope you, as the audience, feel that that's brought things to life a little bit more for you, both from hearing from Hannah, but also seeing the images that have been shown on the screen as this conversation's gone on. Our first build is underway at the moment. We're a matter of weeks away from it being completed, and it is looking exceptional and is doing exactly what we wanted to do for £5,000. We're building two, so we're spending a total of £10,000, but we're getting two classrooms, exactly the same floor dimensions as our previous one, so we're not compromising on space. It's just built in a very, very clever way, using local resources, working with local people, and just being built in a very, very different way, in a sustainable way. What we're aiming to do now is build even more of these classrooms in the Magadi ward of Kenya. We're wanting to get as many of these classrooms built as possible to create a real case study for change. I'm delighted to say that we've already got part of the government in Kenya on board with this approach. I'm not suggesting that these classrooms should replace current builds at all. However, there is a real opportunity to maximise education spend and get more children into school in the right way. We're not asking the government to spend any more money, but what we're working with them on is actually helping them to do education right. So through the build of a classroom, through halving that cost, we're able to make sure that the government is spending money on salaries of teachers, on resources, and running those classrooms properly. So I'm delighted that this project is coming off the ground. We just really need to keep this programme going. And as a charity, these designs are for us to give away. It's not for us to keep. It's not for us to try and just do this ourselves. We really believe that this is a path for making a positive change in education and getting millions of children into the classroom in areas of abject poverty.